Welcome to No Better Death, the podcast that knows while you can die no better death than your own, that doesn't mean we can't take a look for the unusual and the noteworthy in the deaths of others. Each episode will take an in-depth look at some out-of-the-ordinary deaths and the events surrounding them. This show will contain explicit language and graphic details. I'm your host, Sick Grayson. Hello, one and all. Episode 10. Hooray for arbitrary numbers. I read a statistic the other day that said 50% of all podcasts give up by the 10th episode. And another 50% of those that go on past the 10th episode give up by the 25th. So, based on that statistic, if you make it to episode 26, you're doing better than 75%. And right now, by hitting episode 10, looks like we're doing better than that 50%. I hope this finds you well and in good spirits. Things at the Grayson household are going fine. Post-Halloween depression is over. Mom's doing better. She's back to business as usual after the heart attacks. Hopefully not smoking or tweaking or any of that kind of shit going on, you know. You know moms. What are you going to do? Holidays are getting into gear, so that's got the kids happy. It's been snowing again, but I'm oddly okay with it. Usually I shut down and immediately go into a depressive state when it gets cold. But there's been something charming about it so far this year, or maybe I'm just getting too old to complain about it. But the quietness that seems to fall over the city, and that little bit of the chill that makes you want to cuddle up with somebody, it's nice. Things are slower at my job. Feels like less stress at home. Perfect weather to just smoke a bowl, make a warm drink, a hot toddy or schnapsy type stuff, and just chill with your family and watch a movie, you know? So that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been sipping on this big-ass bottle of Fireball the last couple days, and I'm digging it, which is unusual for me. My wife and I went into town the other night after the snow. It was super quiet. We went to this barcade. We didn't drink, but we played a bunch of classic games in this bar that was almost empty, which was really cool. I almost beat Street Fighter 2 on 1 quarter, guys. 1 quarter. I was so close, but I lost to myself. I was Guile. I couldn't remember how to do the Sonic Boom, and I got my ass handed to me and lost, but I almost did it on 1 quarter. What else? I went to see Ego Likeness last week. If you don't know who they are, it's a female-fronted industrial rock outfit from Maryland. They started out as kind of a soundscapey electronic act, but over the years became more guitar and beat driven. The newer stuff's a lot harder than the earlier stuff. Steven Archer is the mastermind behind that. I posted the links to some of their songs on Twitter and Facebook. If you're interested, you can go back and check those out. They came to Denver with Abby Death, and the local opener was Midnight Marionettes. I thought it was a thoroughly enjoyable show. Not a lot of people showed up, so it was a smaller crowd playing kind of a dive bar setup where the stage was only like 4 inches off the ground. So it was really cool for a small show. No moshing though, which kind of sucked, but the 2 opening acts were great. Ego Likeness played an awesome set list. I got to meet Steven and talk to him for a little bit. Super nice dude. As soon as I get done recording this episode, I'm actually going over to Sunshine Studios, which is this venue 5 or 6 blocks from my house. I'm going to go see John 5. You may know him as the guitarist for Rob Zombie, or the guitarist that came in to tour for Manson on Mechanical Animals and then stuck around for a few albums. He's also played for Lita Ford, David Lee Roth, and just a lot of people. 7 or 8 solo albums, and they're, down the block from my house with a Hell's a Poppin' Circus Sideshow. So as soon as I'm done recording here, I'm going to go check that out. That's really all the updates from the Grayson house. Things are going good, getting kind of quiet and lazy for the holidays. I think I got a really good episode in store for you today. The last few episodes, I was in kind of a hurry with all the Halloween busyness and my mom's health scare and just sort of being in a mental funk. I feel like I might have phoned in the last couple episodes. I took sources from just 1 or 2 big articles on most of those stories instead of writing up my own report for the episode like I usually do. A lot of short stories were in the last few, but I feel like this week I'm back in form. I've got pages and pages of material compiled by myself, a good mix of long and short stories, some statistics. I just feel like it's a good episode getting back to what the show should be. So without further ado, another shooting, Wednesday, September 7th. And shooters don't get names on my shows. We're not going to say any names. Just a former Marine whose high school track coach described him as a sadistic teenager who wanted to join the Marines so he could kill, and a ticking time bomb. Now, this is what they were calling him in high school. Opened fire inside the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California. This was a bar frequented by college kids and had become a meeting place for locals who had survived the Las Vegas shooting, a meetup that was led by a Borderline employee, Tel Orfanos. He was a survivor of the Las Vegas shooting himself, and he just sort of started this meetup where people in the area, or if they were passing through California or whatever, survivors of the Las Vegas shooting could stop in and find some people to hang out with. Several of the survivors were actually gathered at Borderline on the night of the shooting, and though Tell had been lucky enough to survive Vegas, that luck would not repeat itself when a former Marine set off smoke bombs, shot several security guards and employees at the door of the bar, and then entered the bar firing his Glock 45, killing 12 people. Tell's mom is the one you've seen on the news talking about how she doesn't want prayers, she wants gun control, and I couldn't agree with her more. I don't mean to belittle religion, but if you're a religious person and that's what gets you through the day, fine, whatever. I'm sure it's better than drugs or alcohol, but prayers and well wishes and good vibes, whatever the hell you want to call it, isn't going to stop this shit. Taking guns and ammunition out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them will stop this shit, or at least greatly reduce it. And also, not to speak ill of our service members, but I work for the Department of Defense, and I can't tell you how many of these guys start their story with, "I walked into the recruiter's office and told him I wanted to kill people." Now, in recent years, the military's been a little bit better about not recruiting those kind of people, but some of them still make it in. They show up and they say, "I want to kill people," and the government says, "Okay, go kill people," but then at some point, they say, "Okay, you can come back home now," but the one thing they can't do is turn off the kill switch. You took them because they were willing to do this, you trained them to be efficient at doing this, and then release them back into the general population. What do we expect to happen? I mean, this is definitely not every veteran or everyone who joins the military, but you have to expect this kind of thing to happen from time to time. I mean, is this really any different than what's going on overseas in the war zones? This is an every half-hour occurrence in some spots on the globe. The only reason it's a story to us is because it happened in a bar in California and not a shelled-out elementary school in Afghanistan. You know, this kind of shit's not going to stop until we as a country can come to some consensus on gun control and mental health. The two are hand in hand at this point, and the bodies are piling up. We need to figure out what we're going to do about it. And then Thousand Oaks would find itself in trouble again within a day or two after the shooting. The area that the shooting took place in is on fire. As of the time I'm writing this, the body count is, I believe, 42 or 44, with hundreds of people missing or unaccounted for. There's at least 13 coroner teams from across the state working in the area to locate the dead, hundreds of search and rescue personnel out there in smoke and ashes and embers, looking for survivors and pulling bodies. Cadaver dogs are being used. Portable morgue units have been brought in by the military. It sounds bleak. It's coming up on something like 150,000 acres of land, and over 8,000 buildings have been destroyed. The town of Paradise has basically been wiped off the map. I saw some of the pictures and it looks like a war zone, just burnt out cars, nothing but frame and bodies sitting on the sides of the road. The campfire, as it's being called, is the deadliest and most destructive fire in California's history. But fear not, wherever rich white people are, wherever they're in trouble, the president is certainly there to help. If you're a poor person in Puerto Rico and have no water, electricity, or medical care, the White House's stance is you can go fuck yourself. But Gerard Butler's house burns down, and they've got an emergency package approved and on its way in a matter of minutes. More headlines. Jimmel Robertson, and this one really pisses me off. Sunday, November 11th, there was a shooting at Manny's Blue Room Lounge in Robbins, Illinois, about 20 miles south of Chicago. Several drunk men were asked to leave the bar when at least one of them came back into the bar and opened fire in retaliation for being kicked out. Robertson, a musician at churches in the area who was studying to be a police officer / the bar's security guard, managed to wrestle the shooter to the ground, saving multiple lives, and had the suspect down on the ground with a knee and a gun in his back when cops arrived. Everyone at the bar, knowing cops were chomping at the bit waiting to shoot black men, yelled, "He's security," over and over when the cops arrived, and it was also indicated by the vest he was wearing that said security on it. And the police, being the asshats they Night of the Living Dead this guy anyway. They shot and killed him on the spot. But don't worry though, the guy who was actually shooting up the bar, he's being treated in a local hospital and has yet to be charged with anything. He's fine if you were worried about that guy. Meanwhile, the dude who saved everybody's lives gets shot by the cops when they show up. Robertson's mother has filed a lawsuit seeking over $1 million in damages from the officer and the village of Midlothian, Illinois. And this is just one more example of the kind of world we're living in and doing nothing about. And I don't know, man. Maybe I'm getting overly political about these stories, but it kind of does. It all seems to fall into place. It all seems to be pointing in one area, Another shooting, and nobody wants to do anything about gun control. California catches on fire, and they're getting help right away, but if you're stuck in a hurricane in any other American, or any kind of natural disaster, not a hurricane, but any kind of natural disaster in certain other American territories, you're just fucked. You're on your own. But we'll take care of California because that's where all the rich people live. And then top it all off with another cop shooting a black guy who wasn't doing anything wrong scenario. It's bleak out there, man. I hate to put this kind of heavy shit on people during the holidays, but something needs to change. And it is with a heavy heart that I move on to the next headline. What can I say that hasn't been said already, or that won't be said at some point? Nothing, really. But here's what I had to say about the passing of Stan Lee on the No Better Death Facebook page. The man regretted never finishing his great American novel, but left a legacy that touched many more people and will live on much longer than anything Faulkner or Hemingway ever wrote. He co-created characters that we would see ourselves in and aspire to be. Fictional beings so awesome that we look to them for real inspiration in times of need and darkness. He helped revive a company that would come to define pop culture for multiple generations and gave nerd culture the push it needed to leave its dimly lit basements for more accepting climes. Good work, sir. Excelsior. Stan Lee was many things to many people. I'm glad such a prolific mind was able to be appreciated in his time rather than years after his demise, as seems to happen to so many brilliant people. To even begin to touch on his contributions to society would be a multi-part pod series that is far outside the scope of what we do here on No Better Death. But if you know the man's name, you know enough to know how impactful his work is and will continue to be until the day the sun eats the earth. My favorite character created by Stan, I'll give you two. Paul Philip Ravage, the protagonist of Ravage 2099. I've been told by some people that's deep cuts. I don't really agree. I mean, the 2099 universe was there for anybody to check out. You just had to take the time to check it out. But that was probably one of the shorter-lived characters that Stan created. But I fell in love with it. I mean, it was kind of like cyberpunk, environmentalist in a way. It was ahead of its time, which is why I think it didn't get the credit it deserved. Ravage was a total badass. Check it out if you're not familiar with it. Second favorite character Stan Lee created, Jason Lee, man. Mallrats, My Name is Earl, Memphis Beat, Dogma, Underdog, the list goes on. Jason Lee is one of my favorite actors since I saw Mallrats as a 13 or 14-year-old. But he was 95. It's no surprise or shock. Still a loss. Regardless of how well-lived a life is, it's still a loss whenever it comes to an end. But 95, the guy had a good run. May his work continue to inspire us to be better people. And we'll throw in a few seconds of silence here. Alright, let's get into it. Black Friday. You love it for the deals, I love it for the chaos. I'll admit it, yeah, I do go and I do shop, but I'm not there for the shopping. I'm there to watch the carnage. I'm that asshole. Some people go to a race to watch the cars and cheer on their favorite driver, but most people are just there to see a crash, right? Same thing with Black Friday. Some of us are just there to watch people be stupid and see what happens. Some men just want to watch the world burn, as Al said in the Patrick Bateman Batman, and I am no different. I am one of those men. Tell me where the fire's at, I'm there to watch that motherfucker burn. And in my experience, the poorer the town, the worse the chaos. Black Friday in, say, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Nebraska, far more extreme than it is here in Colorado. I've seen people battle over a Buzz Lightyear doll in Nebraska before, but you go to, say, Monument, Colorado, a smaller, slightly more affluent town just north of Colorado Springs, everyone's fairly calm, slow walking, excuse me, thank you kind of people, boring, way easier shopping, which is why I go there to do my Black Friday shopping, but far less entertaining. In recent years, however, there seems to be less chaos everywhere overall. You know, sales are starting at 5 on Thanksgiving now instead of just having 2,000 people line up outside the doors at Walmart at 5 a.m. There's lines for the more in-demand items. Some places have a number for you to take so you can just come back and get it once it's for sale, first come, first served basis rather than end up in a fight. A lot of different times the different items go on sale, ropes, barricades, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot of safety precautions for Black Friday these days that weren't always there. But why? The following stories are going to give us a little bit of insight. Jim Ty DeMore was described as a big man, 270 pounds according to some, but he was a gentle giant to his friends who said he loved to chat about movies, anime, and politics. Those same friends were left reeling and baffled by the way he died on November 21st, 2008. On Thanksgiving Day 2008, shoppers began lining up outside the Walmart in Valley Stream, Long Island at 5:30 p.m. near a small handwritten sign that read, "Blitz line starts here." Like many other retailers holding doorbuster deals, Walmart was offering deep discounts on a limited number of TVs, iPods, DVD players, and other coveted products. Only 2 months earlier, the U.S. economy had nearly collapsed, and although the Christmas shopping season was looking dismal, there was still some dim hope that the nation might be able to shop its way out of disaster, as we were advised to do after 9/11. By 2 in the morning, the line ran the length of the building, past Petland, turned at a wire fence, and stretched far into the bleak parking lot of the Green Acres Mall, a tundra of frosted tarmac. There were already more than 1,000 people. Store managers had placed 8 interlocking plastic barriers between the front of the line and the outer doors to the store to create a buffer zone that would keep people from crowding around the entrance. But at 3, people began jumping the barriers. The store's assistant manager, Mike, spoke to the manager, Steve, who had gone to a hotel to rest, and told him that the customers had breached the buffer zone. Mike sounded frightened. Steve told him to call the police. The Nassau County Police arrived soon after the call and, using bullhorns, ordered everyone to get back behind the barriers. The police were still there at 4 when Steve returned to the store. Shortly afterward, a Walmart employee brought some family members inside the barriers, angering the crowd. About 200 shoppers pushed into the buffer zone. Those in front were squeezed against 2 sliding glass outer doors that led to a glassed-in, high-ceilinged entrance vestibule that also held some vending machines. These had been pushed to the center of the space to prevent people from crossing it diagonally and entering through the exit doors. As more people gathered in anticipation of the store's opening, at 5 a.m. the pressure on the doors built and they began to shake. "Push the doors in," some yelled from the back. Employees asked the police for help. According to a court filing, the police responded that dealing with this crowd was not in their job description, and they left. Of the 2-man security force that Walmart had hired for Blitz Day, only one has shown up, and he was inside the store. Shortly before 5, the crowd had begun to swell to about 2,000 people. The store's asset protection manager, Sal D'Amico, advised Steve not to open the doors, but Steve overruled him. He instructed 8 to 10 of his largest employees, most of whom worked in the stockroom, to stand at the sides of the vestibule as the outer doors were opened and be ready to help anyone who tripped or fell. One of those men was Demore, who lived in Jamaica, Queens. His parents were Haitian immigrants. Demore was 34 and beefy at 6 feet 5 inches tall. He weighed around 480 pounds. He had been working at Walmart for about a week as a temporary employee in the stockroom. Like the others in the vestibule, he had no training in security or crowd control. A coworker had reportedly heard him say earlier, "I don't want to be here." Just before 5, the workers realized that a pregnant woman, Linnea Lockley, a 28-year-old part-time college student from South Ozone Park, was being crushed against the glass on the outer doors. The managers slid them open just enough to pull Lockley inside the vestibule. The crowd surged forward, thinking that the store was opening. The workers shut the doors again and braced both sliding doors with their bodies to keep them from caving in. As Steve initiated the festive countdown, a Walmart Blitz Day tradition, the doors were opened again. There was a loud cracking sound as both sliding doors burst from their frame and the crowd boiled in. Dennis Fitch, one of the workers standing at the entrance, was blown backwards through the inner vestibule doors and into the store. Others managed to jump to safety on top of the vending machines. Some attempted to form a human chain on the other side of the vestibule to slow down the crowd rushing into the store. A crush soon developed inside the vestibule, but the people who were still outside pushing forward weren't aware of it. Linnea Lockley was carried through the vestibule and into the store by the surge, and she tripped over an older woman who was on the ground. As she got to her knees, she later said she saw Demore next to her. "I was screaming that I was pregnant. I'm sure he heard that," she told Newsday. "He was trying to block the people from pushing me down to the ground and trampling me. It was a split second, and we had eye contact as if we knew we were going to die." Co-workers later testified that Demore was hit by one of the 2 sliding glass doors. As he went down, the door fell on top of him, and people fell over the door. Maybe he got up to help Lockley, but that's not clear in the camera and cell phone footage of the scene. He just vanishes into the frantic tangle of limbs. Lockley's husband Sean was able to pull her out, badly bruised. Luckily, a healthy girl was born the following April. And though Big Guy Down was broadcast over the walkie-talkies that some of Demore's co-workers carried, they had to fight their way through the crowd to reach him, so they were able to get the pregnant lady out, but Demore is still laying down on the ground, being trampled by everybody rushing in through the door, and the people that are supposed to be coming to help him up, his co-workers, are having to battle through this same crowd to try to get to him, so it's not looking good. I mean, and if he's on the show, we know it doesn't turn out that well. By the time co-workers were able to get to him and dig him out of the crowd, his tongue was hanging out of his mouth and his eyes had rolled back in his head. Police returned at 5:05 a.m. and performed CPR without success. Demore was pronounced dead at the Franklin Hospital Medical Center in Valley Stream at 6:03 a.m. The coroner's report did not mention any bruises, fractures, or internal injuries, as it would have if he'd been trampled to death. The cause of death was listed as asphyxia. There had been previous injuries on Black Fridays, but no one had ever died before Demore went down in the Valley Stream Walmart. His death, and the Walmart stampede that caused it, was the lead story on news channels across the country that evening, and it provoked a vast outcry of horror. As you would expect, I mean, this guy was trampled to death, basically choked out. He couldn't breathe in all the chaos that was going on around him. Like, his skull wasn't fractured or anything like that. According to the coroner report, he just couldn't breathe. So many people were running on top of him that he just couldn't catch his breath, and he died. And I mean, nobody meant for that to happen, but everyone who walked through those doors allowed that to happen. That's 2,000 people guilty of this guy's death. In the days of commentary that followed, the crowd was widely vilified. The tone of much of the reaction was captured by a letter written to the New York Post that blamed the animals, you know who you are, who stampeded that poor man at Walmart on Black Friday. You are a perfect example of the depraved decadence of today's society. A Walmart senior vice president, Hank Mulaney, said in a statement, "Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of the deceased. We are continuing to work closely with local law enforcement, and we are reaching out to those involved." Investigators would be reviewing video collected from security cameras and looking at purchases made with credit cards in an effort to identify individuals who may have witnessed or been involved in Damore's death. But even if investigators could pick out amid the flailing limbs and hurtling bodies in the videos those who had harmed Damore, who could say that he or she wasn't pushed by the person behind? And at any rate, the police seemed to be in no mood to work closely with Walmart. Rather, they went out of their way to blame Walmart for the incident. Detective Lieutenant Michael Fleming, who was in charge of the investigation into Damore's death, said at the time, "I've heard other people call this an accident, but it is not. Certainly, it was a foreseeable act." Through the winter and spring of 2009, the Nassau County District Attorney's Office prepared to bring criminal charges against Walmart for felony reckless endangerment and misdemeanor reckless endangerment. The family of Jim Ty Damore filed a wrongful death claim against the company. However, in early May 2009, the county's district attorney Kathleen Rice announced that her office had worked out a deal with Walmart that allowed it to avoid criminal charges. The company agreed to donate $1.5 million to various community projects and to create a $400,000 victims fund. Walmart also agreed to implement a crowd management plan for future post-Thanksgiving Day events at each of its 92 New York stores. In return, Walmart would face no charges or criminal liability for the death of Damore. If the company failed to meet the standards set by an independent monitor for 3 years, the criminal case would be reinstated. Rice, noting that the maximum penalty Walmart would have faced is a $10,000 fine, said, "This agreement does more than any criminal prosecution could ever accomplish." Damore's father, O'Gara Charles, saw things a little differently. "It's like if they were driving a car and they hit someone, killed him, and then just walked away," he told Newsday. By the end of that May, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, cited Walmart for committing a serious violation of the General Duty Clause of the OSHA Act. The clause states that an employer must furnish workers with a place of employment that is free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees. In its complaint, OSHA listed the hazards that Damore and his co-workers faced as asphyxiation, being struck due to crowd rush, crowd surge, or crowd trampling. The complaint also stated that Walmart did not use appropriate crowd management techniques to safely manage a large crowd of approximately 2,000 customers. The proposed penalty was $7,000, not an enormous burden for the world's biggest retailer, which had total sales of $405 billion in 2010. But Walmart elected to contest the citation and hired the Washington, D.C. law firm of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher to handle the litigation. Walmart objected on multiple grounds. First, if crowd crushes and surges were recognized hazards, then why hadn't a single OSHA General Duty Clause citation ever referred to the dangers posed by crowds before? Walmart also maintained that it had taken steps to protect its workers from the crowd, but it could not have protected workers from this particular crowd. And finally, the violence caused by the crowd was a police issue and therefore beyond OSHA's jurisdiction. A federal administrative law judge, Covett Rooney, of the Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission, was assigned to the case. But it did not come to trial for more than a year. Walmart's lawyers filed 20 pretrial motions and responses and spent, by OSHA's calculations, $2 million fighting the $7,000 fine. In all, OSHA lawyers invested around 5,000 hours in the case. Why was Walmart fighting a paltry fine so hard? To the extent that the citation could strengthen the Damore family's civil case, $2 million could be seen as a worthwhile gamble. Moreover, no retailer welcomed OSHA jurisdiction over how it managed its customers. Casey Crust, an executive vice president of the Retail Industry Leaders Association at the time, said, "The impact of this case is potentially huge. Does it mean I have to hire an event management staff next time I hold a doorbuster sale? Does this mean every time you have a hot product, a video game, a Harry Potter book, or an iPhone, much less a Black Friday sale, you'll be liable for potential action if you don't hire crowd management?" OSHA's burden was to prove that the crowd surge and crowd crush are well-known phenomenon and that crowd management techniques could have prevented them at the Green Acres Mall. To do that, it needed to find an expert who would testify against Walmart. Most experts in the field consult for private industry, event planners, promoters, venue owners, operators, and to a lesser extent, large retailers. Even if they agreed with OSHA, testifying against the world's largest retailer wasn't likely to be good for business, and many experts wouldn't do it. But one would. Paul Wertherheimer, the 62-year-old self-employed owner of Crowd Management Strategies, who has been called the Marshal of the Mosh Pit. The Walmart trial took place during 6 very hot days in July 2010 in a courtroom in the Jacob Javits Federal Building in Lower Manhattan. 4 Walmart employees who had been at the entrance of the vestibule with Damore testified. Justin Rice, who had been promoted to department manager before Black Friday and who was still working at the store, said that the doors had been broken on Blitz Day in 2007 and he had been nicked by broken glass. Another employee said the doors came off the hinges in 2005 and 2006 as well. All the men said that they had never had any training in crowd management before being placed in the vestibule on November 28, 2008, except for slip, trip, and fall guidelines. If a customer slips, you help him up. And then the 10-foot rule, which is if a customer gets within 10 feet, you're supposed to greet them with the "Welcome to Walmart." So these people had no training. They put 4 or 5 people at the doors to try to manage 2,000 people rushing in at one time. No kind of training whatsoever. Really feels lax on the part of Walmart. One particularly damning bit of evidence was a video that students from the New York Institute of Technology happened to make of management meeting 2 days before the Blitz event. Rice can be heard raising the matter of the 2007 melee with Steve, the Walmart manager, and saying that people had to be kept away from the doors this year. He says, "Last year was crazy. A lot of people fell, little babies out there, and it was cold. I just don't want that this year." Steve Suknanan, the manager of the Walmart, tells him that this year we're going to do it a little differently. He explains that he had arranged for construction barriers to be placed farther from the entrance and to have additional staff at the door. Jason Schwartz, the lead trial attorney for Walmart, wasted no time in attacking Paul Wertherheimer's qualifications as a crowd expert, the dubiously monikered Marshal of the Mosh Pit. So this is the line of questioning Schwartz, Walmart's lawyer, had for Wertherheimer, the Marshal of the Mosh Pit, to try to make him look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Schwartz said, "What do you do when you're in a crowd, Mr. Wertherheimer, in order to enhance your expertise?" To which Wertherheimer responded, "I observe the crowd dynamics, the crowd behavior, and people in the crowd, and talk to people in the crowd to see how they're feeling, see what's going on." If I did that, would I have the same level of experience in crowds as you do? No. Why not? You're not an expert in the area of crowd management. I see. Your Honor, I would submit that this expert's qualifications are the same qualifications that everyone standing in this courtroom has. Judge Rooney responded, "He has more experience in crowds than I do. I don't take the subways, so I have no idea what it's like to be in a crowd. Well, I could say back in my days of college I took the subway here in New York and I was very claustrophobic, so I do believe that there is some assistance that, or some value that, is going to be elicited from this case." Wertherheimer was allowed to continue, and during 2 days of testimony detailed many crowd measures that Walmart could have taken but didn't. He was particularly effective in showing why the construction barriers wouldn't control the crowd. They were too low to keep people out, and they were flared at the bottom so that people who got pushed up against the sides fell in. At the end of 6 days, Judge Rooney had 1,200 pages of testimony to deliberate over. Both sides eagerly awaited the verdict, which was expected shortly thereafter. If OSHA were to win, Walmart would almost certainly appeal all the way to the U.S. Court of Appeals if necessary. Still, a decision for OSHA would have been an enormous symbolic value because it would have been a victory for the crowd. Judge Rooney ruled in favor of the government. Rooney concluded first that Damore was exposed to a hazard. The cell phone video alone made that clear. Second, Walmart recognized the hazard from previous Blitz Day crowd control problems. Third, the hazard was sufficient enough to cause serious injury or death. And fourth, that Walmart could have prevented the death by taking proper precautions. As proof of this last point, Judge Rooney cited Walmart's Black Friday sales at the Valley Stream store in 2009 and 2010, during which no one was injured. So basically, Walmart letting this trial go on for so long by fighting it just gave more proof that this could have been stopped. Immediately after 2008, 2009, and 2010, they were able to pull this off without any kind of problem remotely close to what had happened in 2008. So they pretty much, in trying to buy time to fight the case, gave themselves enough rope to hang themselves with. They proved the court's point that, hey, this could have been prevented. They fought this verdict at every point they could to avoid a $7,000 fine, which OSHA upheld as a final decision. You're out of appeals, there's nowhere else to take this shit, stop complaining about it. In 2015, 7 years after Damore's death, Walmart finally gave in and paid the fine. They spent $1 million just in legal fees, plus whatever other expenses were included in the battle. Some are estimating it to be over $2 million to fight a $7,000 fine for a company that made $482 billion in 2015. They still complained about it while paying it. To this day, Walmart's official stance on this incident is that they shouldn't have been held responsible. They weren't alone in responsibility. The crowd had a responsibility to behave like adults, to act right, to not turn into the fucking warriors over a TV being $50 off. Yes, everyone in that surge that came through the doors is a murderer. You're out there, if you hear me telling the story and you were there, you're a murderer. But you had an accomplice, you had someone encouraging you to murder. Walmart said, hey, as many people as possible, why don't you line up for some really good deals on things you can't afford at any other time? Come inside a store not designed to hold this many of you and try like hell to get your hands on items we didn't order nearly enough of to prevent you from fighting over it. Walmart encouraged a riot, as did every other store that operated this way before this case. And when you encourage a riot, you encourage bodily harm, which precipitates death. Walmart was a murderer in this situation just as much as the people who actually walked over that man. Sam Walton wouldn't have stood for this shit. Sam Walton would have refused to let Walmart participate in shit like this. And if he did, he would have overseen the company-wide safety procedures put into place ahead of time to prevent this sort of thing. And he definitely would have accepted responsibility, paid the fine, and probably voluntarily offered a settlement to the family of the man who died. Sam Walton was a person, not a faceless company. Corporate negligence, again and again and again. I don't line these stories up on purpose. I'm not anti-business or anything like that. They make the stories, not me. I just happen to find them because there's thousands, if not millions of them. And they all have the same theme. Companies will do everything they can to get their hands on your money, but nothing to ensure your safety while you're giving them that money. They may as well be fucking cigarette companies. In a separate action, Nassau County District Attorney Kathleen Rice moved to file felony reckless endangerment charges against Walmart, but they agreed to pay $2 million to settle the case and avoid criminal prosecution. The settlement included $400,000 to compensate Damore's family and the injured victims. $400,000 is not nearly enough for parents that lost a child, siblings that lost a brother. A life is priceless, but as for a dollar amount, a life is worth far more than $400,000. 2, where the fuck did the other $1.6 million of the settlement go? I guess community charity and projects? I couldn't really find out, but if this is the same move that they were trying to pull in the beginning before Walmart started fighting everything, like $1.6 million went to the community, and the family who lost a loved one got $400,000. And no one in Walmart was held criminally accountable for anything. They paid $2,007,000, and that was the extent of their responsibility. And that's the story of Jim Ty Damore. I'm probably butchering his name. I don't do well with foreign words. I'm just an idiot like that. But yeah, Damore, the first official Black Friday fatality, trampled to death when a crowd overran the non-existent safety measures at a Walmart Black Friday sale. Would his death change anything? Would all the legal proceedings and changes implemented over this case be enough to prevent it from happening again? I mean, the court stated in 2009, 2010, Walmart had much better security in place. Nothing like this happened at Walmart during those years. But people are still dying at Black Friday sales. You know, we like to think we're the smartest, we're the strongest, we're the best species. That's why we won. That's why we beat out like 5 other species of humans. No, we won that contest because we're the most deceitful. We figured out how to discuss things that aren't right here, right now. Basically, we learned how to lie and trick our cousins who were actually smarter and stronger and more capable of adaptation. They just lacked the ability to cognize the false, which is the one thing we excelled at. We tricked them into letting us fuck, starve, or murder them out of existence. We are not the smart ones. If we were, what happened to Walter Vance at a West Virginia Target on Black Friday 2011 would have never happened. Walter Dale Vance was a 61-year-old pharmacist and reportedly the nicest dude on earth, who unfortunately had a history of heart problems, including having a stent put in 2 weeks before venturing into a Target in South Charleston, West Virginia, shortly after midnight on Black Friday 2011 to buy Christmas ornaments and other holiday items for his newly remodeled workplace at Aracoma Drug Company, where he had worked since he was 16. As of the mid-70s, he was made co-owner. But, as you already know, if we're talking about him, he didn't make it to the office Crimbus party that year. Yes, I say Crimbus, that is due to a lack of religious reasons and also so as not to exclude or overtly include any specific holiday celebrations. But this guy, man, sounds like salt of the earth. 60-something, married to his wife for 31 years according to his obituary. No kids, but a lot of nieces, nephews, and cousins. He was a deacon and Bible teacher at the same church his entire adult life. He worked the same job at the same company his whole life. This guy was Main Street, Mayberry, USA. Goes out to buy office Christmas ornaments at Target. Starts having a heart attack. Not sure what caused it. None of the reports said what it was. Could have been and probably was just the lifetime of heart conditions, and it happened to hit its hardest while he was at the store. Could have been the stress of the crowd. Who knows? But he starts having some kind of problem in electronics. He collapses to the ground, and immediately 100 people run over because the store's packed, right? No. People just ignore him and step over him for a while. Eventually, a nurse and an EMT spot him. The nurse yells for help. Target ropes off the aisle. Employees call 911 while the nurse and the paramedics start performing CPR, trying to get this guy on his feet again. The crowd is kept at bay, but sadly, Walter died shortly after arriving at the hospital. The nurse that had helped him, Kimberly Rowland, said that she didn't see anyone ignoring him or being heartless once she found him, but doesn't know what happened to him before she came across him lying on the floor. Okay, but if you're also the first one to him, the first one to help him, then that means everyone else either ignored him or just stood there. No one was helping this guy until she walked up. All other accounts say this guy collapsed and laid there for a while. Not sure if it was a minute or 5 minutes, we don't know, but he was ignored and walked over or stepped on or brushed past until a nurse found him, and that lack of immediate care resulted in his death. Had someone rushed to his aid as soon as he collapsed, they could have got 911 called right away, started giving him whatever help he needed, the ambulance would have been there and got him to the hospital before it was too late. But everyone was too busy doing their shopping and trying to get that elusive deal, that fucking Xbox or laptop or digital photo frame, that they were too busy, aka too selfish, to stop and help this guy. The obituary didn't mention how or where he died at all, so that probably says something. Whoever wrote the obituary didn't want to make it sound like this man, who, again, according to everything I could find, was a friend to everyone in town, was allowed to die a pauper's death surrounded by an uncaring swarm of greedy consumers. And with that, it is time for 5 fast facts about Black Friday. 1. The term Black Friday was originally used to describe stock market crashes in the 1800s. 2. The city that first popularized the term was Philadelphia, where police, frustrated by congestion caused by shoppers on that day, began referring to the day as Black Friday. Retailers tried to rebrand it, calling it Big Friday to make it sound better, but the police's term caught on, and that's why we call it Black Friday instead of Big Friday. 3. While it had been considered a shopping day since the 1930s, Black Friday didn't become the biggest shopping day of the year until 2001. 4. Canadian retailers, tired of shoppers crossing the border looking for better deals, now have their own Black Friday sales despite their Thanksgiving being a full month earlier than America's. 5. President Lincoln originally declared Thanksgiving to be the last Thursday in November. However, retailers who considered the holiday shopping season to not start until the day after Thanksgiving thought the shopping season was way too short and petitioned Franklin Roosevelt to move the holiday back in order to extend the holiday shopping season, to which he agreed, which is why Thanksgiving is now the third Thursday in November, and Black Friday is that day after. The more you know. The danger doesn't just stop with the crowd and the chaos. Getting trampled or having a heart attack aren't the only thing to worry about on Black Friday. Nope. You could get pepper sprayed, you could get in a fist fight, you could get hit by shopping carts, you could even get shot. November 28th, 2008, Palm Desert, California. Same day Damore got trampled all the way across the country in New York, two assholes shoot each other to death in a Toys R Us. The victims were identified as Alejandro Moreno of Desert Hot Springs and Juan Meza, 28, of Cathedral City. Witnesses Scott and Joan Barrick said they were checking out of the Toys R Us when the brawl began between two women, each with a man. The women were near the checkout area, but the Barricks didn't think the women had any purchases to make. One woman suddenly started punching the other woman, who fought back as blood flowed from her nose, said Scott Barrick, 41. The man who was with the woman being punched pulled a gun halfway out of his pocket, then shoved it back in. He pulled his gun right next to me. I turned to look for my wife, and she was already hiding, Scott Barrick said. I was scared, said Joan Barrick. I didn't want to die that day. I really didn't want to die that day, and I think that's what we were all thinking. The other man, in response, pulled a gun, pointed it at the first man, but forgot to cock it. The first man tried to run, but was blocked by the line of people. Then he ran back toward the store's electronics section as the other man began firing. The first man reached a dead end in electronics, turned around, and ran toward an exit, pulling his gun and firing back at the second guy. He went up to the cash register, went to put his hand on the thing, and then just went, "Phoom," said Scott Barrick, indicating that the man fell. Ray Turner said he was 2 aisles away when two women began shouting and screaming at each other, and he had a clear view of the fight until a crowd clustered around them. Both women had children, he said. Audio from 911 calls revealed more of the scene inside the store. I think this guy's dying, please hurry, a clerk at the Toys R Us told a 911 dispatcher. What sounds like a gunshot can be heard as the clerk tries to describe what's happening in the store. Oh my God, she screams. What's going on, the dispatcher says. All I know is these two guys started fighting, and now these two guys are on the floor and both of them are shot. They're both down, please hurry. To which I say, why? Why hurry? These two ghetto-ass motherfuckers started shooting at each other in a Toys R Us, and somehow, magically, when we all know people in America have no aim, don't know how to shoot, anytime there's a drive-by, it's all innocent bystanders that get hit, never who they're actually trying to kill, but somehow these two get into it in a Toys R Us, manage to hit only each other, and you're telling the paramedics to hurry up? Fuck that! They're endangering the lives of everyone in the store, let them bleed out. Kick the gun away and just let them die. They started this shit. They don't need help. They need to deal with the consequences of their actions. They had children with them, and this is how they act? I mean, you know how to act. We all do. If you haven't grasped the fact that you shouldn't carry guns into a kid's toy store by your late 20s, then you're a lost cause, and the world is better off without you. Anyway, the 2.5-minute recording is replete with cries and screams, sometimes drowning out the caller's voice. The dispatcher tells the clerk more than once she can't understand her and to move somewhere where there's less noise. Like, she has a choice. Okay, there's a shooting going on in the store. You don't have a choice of where the phone is and where it's safe to call from. The clerk describes what the men are wearing and where one of the suspects is lying. Sheriff's deputies arrive by the end of the recording. At least one of the two men who died in the shootout is a known gang member, Riverside County District Attorney Rod Pacheco said, and both had criminal records. Pacheco said Meza sported a tattoo of MVM indicating he belonged to a Mecca area gang. You don't identify yourself with a gang just to get murdered, Pacheco said. I'm not really sure how that statement's relevant. I don't know. According to court records, Meza pleaded guilty in March to being a felon in possession of a firearm. He pleaded guilty to the same charge in November 2007. In September 2005, he had pled guilty to assault with a weapon, and in 2002 pled guilty to possessing a controlled substance for sale while armed, according to court records. Records show that Moreno had a criminal record spanning back to 1998 when he pled guilty to inflicting corporal injury on a spouse. As part of a plea deal, charges of assault with a deadly weapon, criminal threats, and willfully harming a child were dismissed. Because, yeah, you should always just let somebody plea bargain their way out of harming a child. What the fuck? There was no official word of any relationship between the victims or exactly what triggered the shooting, but authorities say there may have been bad blood between the two couples. You don't take a gun in a store. Okay, this is just my thoughts, and I don't push this, by the way. If you ever think any of my opinions are like a little too whatever for the show, keep in mind that I only say this shit on my show. I'm not one of these assholes walking around with a sign telling everybody what to do. I'm not screaming shit through a bullhorn on the corner, okay? This is just my opinion. If you don't like it, turn the show off, and you don't have to hear it anywhere else, I assure you. But you don't take a gun in a store. Being in a military town, I see this all the time. My family and I are just walking through Walmart and some asshole has a gun on his hip. And one of my kids always asks, why does that guy have a gun? And I tell him it's because this guy's either so scared he feels the need to bring a gun into a store around kids, or he's just waiting with bated breath for half a reason to hurt someone. Otherwise, there's no need for it. Leave the shit in your car. Or, hey, here's a crazy idea, your fucking house. I used to work at a Jimmy John's in Nebraska, and once a week or a couple times a month, these two lady bounty hunters would come in, and they always had a gun on them in a fucking sandwich store with kids and family. And my boss would get on to me for complaining about it, but I don't think I'm wrong. You don't need to have weapons on you in a store, and definitely not around kids. Leave it in the car. I know you have a right to carry it. You have a permit. You have all your blah, 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 blah. Doesn't mean it's necessary. I have a right to free speech. Doesn't mean I should run up on a line of kids in the mall waiting to see Santa Claus and tell them that motherfucker ain't real. I have a right to voice my opinion about whatever I want. Doesn't mean I should stand outside a McDonald's covered in fake blood screaming about animal cruelty while kids are trying to enjoy the play place. Have some couth and common sense. Ghetto fuckers, redneck fuckers, military fuckers, weird little white boys who can't get laid, all y'all, do us a favor, leave the gun at home or in your car. And I know you're out there thinking, right, well, what if someone else starts shooting? Don't you want someone with a gun? That motherfucker shouldn't have one either. That's the whole point. Yes, I see on TV people that go into a place to shoot up a place, get shot by somebody else who happens to be in there with a gun, and because that guy happened to be there with a gun, everybody's safe and everything's fine, and the only person that got shot was the one that walked in there to do everybody harm. Great. Swell. Love it. Glad that dude was there. That doesn't negate the fact that the first person shouldn't have had a gun to require the second person to have one. Don't take your fucking guns inside a toy store. You can't take them in Toys R Us now, can you? Ha! Ha! Toys R Us responded by saying, "We are outraged by the act of violence that occurred this afternoon in Palm Desert, California, and by the fact that anyone would compromise the safety and security of our customers and employees. We are working closely with local law enforcement officials to determine the specific details of what occurred. Our understanding is that this act seems to have been the result of a personal dispute between the individuals involved. Therefore, it would be inaccurate to associate the events of today with Black Friday." This isn't the only shooting that's happened on Black Friday. Quite a few seem to happen, mostly at Walmart, most resulting in hospitalization, but I did find another lethal shooting, once again caused by someone who doesn't know how to behave. 2016 at a San Antonio, Texas Walmart. Isidro Zarate, 39, tried to stop a man who was assaulting a woman in the parking lot. Zarate and his wife of 22 years, Lisa, arrived at Walmart around 4 p.m. Zarate stayed in the car while his wife went inside. While waiting for his wife, he and at least a dozen witnesses saw Teles Mandan Juarez, a 21-year-old, pulling an unnamed female companion across the Walmart parking lot by her hair, and according to some reports, he was also hitting her. Zarate rolled down his window and yelled, "Take your hands off her," just being like, "Hey man, get off the chick," right? Anyone would say something. At that point, Juarez walked up to Zarate and shot him close range in the neck with shrapnel from the car hitting someone else who was in there, probably one of his 4 kids. This guy was a father of 4 who had just gone to Walmart to let his wife do some shopping, yells, "Hey man, get your hands off that chick." This asshole walks up, shoots him in the neck. Juarez also shot a woman nearby who had called 911. One report said she was hit by a stray bullet that he was firing at Zarate. Another says he directly fired at the woman calling 911. That woman was taken to the hospital and survived, but Zarate was not so lucky. When Lisa emerged from the store 30 minutes after entering, she found police and medical teams in the parking lot putting her husband in a body bag. Juarez fled the scene but was pursued by a helicopter and quickly apprehended not too far away. He pled guilty to multiple charges and has been sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Lisa said in an interview, "We call him the storyteller. He always had a story to tell. He always had a joke. He couldn't ever just say what needed to be said. He had to make it a story. He was such a sweetheart. He made me laugh more than a lot of people I know. He was always smiling and was just a very positive person to be around. I love him and I miss him. We were together forever. I don't know what I'm going to do without him." A father of 4 and a husband of 22 years murdered for telling a guy to stop pulling a woman's hair. I mean, I started this show to just kind of tell you, like, here's a wacky story about how somebody died, but more and more these stories just go dark, you know? And is this the world we live in? I think we all like to tell ourselves, oh, it's just hyped up because it's on TV. The news has to get ratings, so they're looking for the grittiest and nastiest stories out there to get people to tune in, but after you see so many stories like this, you kind of realize this is just where we are. I mean, and this isn't some other country anymore where we're watching this on the news and, oh, that happens over wherever that happens. No, man, this stuff is going down in our backyards. You know, and I can't help but think we can do better. Is this really what we are? Is this the legacy we want to leave to future generations? Is this what we want the aliens to find out about us when they show up here thousands of years after we've wiped ourselves off the face of the planet and they start digging through the dust of our society? I mean, think before you speak, think before you act, treat others how you'd want to be treated, and leave the guns at home. I mean, I'm not anti-gun, I'm just anti-idiocy, you know? Another one at another fucking Walmart in the parking lot during Black Friday, 6 p.m., November 24th, 2016, Reno, Nevada. These are all like the worst left on the cutting room floor versions of Chappelle's Show keeping it real going wrong type shit. When a driver accidentally cut him off, 33-year-old Matthew McGraw got out of his car and began attacking the offending car and driver with a metal baton, busting out the driver's side window and hitting the unnamed driver in the face. The driver, in self-defense, grabbed a gun he conveniently had in his car and fired at McGraw through what was left of the window and killed him. The driver was reported as being compliant with police officers and no charges were filed as he was acting in self-defense. I mean, look, I get angry driving. I'm not going to get out and start bashing somebody's window in because they cut me off or stole my parking space, man. What is wrong with people? Hours later, across the country in New Jersey, same day, and I can't give mass amounts of detail on all of these because this would end up being a 4-hour show if I reported all the detail. But 2 brothers, DeMond and Shady Cotman, ages 21 and 26 respectively, were fired on in a Macy's parking lot, killing DeMond and putting his brother Shady in the hospital. I mean, some of this is making me second guess going Black Friday shopping this year. This year it's my turn. It has been the last few years. I don't know if I want to go, dude. I mean, let's say you do make it into and out of the store safely. You got your things to the car without being mugged. You managed to get to the exit of the parking lot. You're still not free yet. You're not out of danger yet. You still have to make it home after being up all night, running around, probably to multiple stores, no sleep, stressed out, chugging caffeine just to get an extra 5 minutes before your eyes start to feel like they're made out of lead. You have to drive home in a shape that isn't necessarily best for driving, as these next stories will show. November 23rd, 2012, around 6:50 a.m., Arvind Tandal, 48, was driving home from a Black Friday all-nighter with his 34-year-old wife Yogita and his 4 daughters ages 12 to 24. Tandal was driving north from Gilroy after having only about 3 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period while engaged in Black Friday shopping, which included buying items for his daughter Nisha's upcoming wedding. The 4 daughters were packed into a back seat meant for 3 because the third row seat had been folded down to make room for the items they had bought. 2 of the 4 packed into that seat were not wearing seat belts. Wear your seat belts, guys. I used to never wear a seat belt, but in kindergarten they pounded that into my daughter's head. And so she came home and nagged my wife and I to wear our seat belts, and then it just got to the point that I wore it all the time. It's second nature. I put it on now. You guys should do the same. Just wear your seatbelt, man. It's better to have it on and not need it than to need it and not have it on. Safety first, motherfucker. On the way home, Arvind nodded off for just a second, exhausted from a busy day and no sleep. Or I guess a busy night and no sleep. But that second was just long enough for his Lexus SUV to drift onto the shoulder. Lexus, not doing too bad financially there, are you, Arvind? Anyway, drifted into the shoulder. Upon going onto the shoulder, Arvind's baller mobile struck a parked highway patrol car that had pulled over to help someone with a flat tire. The Lexus hit the cop car and rolled as many as 7 times, ejecting the 2 daughters without seatbelts onto the highway and severely injuring the patrolman who was in the car. Had that cop gotten out of the car a few seconds earlier as he had intended to, he would have been killed. Nisha, the 24-year-old daughter who had a wedding coming up in a couple months, was pronounced dead at the scene, and 20-year-old Sheetal died at the hospital that night. The patrolman was so badly injured he was out of work for 8 months. Yogita and Arvind suffered major injuries, and the other 2 daughters sustained moderate injuries, but ultimately all 4 of them recovered. Well, physically at least. I mean, they're still emotionally and mentally scarred forever from the trauma of the accident and losing 2 relatives. The Santa Clara County DA's office charged Tandal with 2 counts of misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter without gross negligence, stating something to the effect that he just made too many bad choices that day that led to a deadly accident for them to not charge him with something. Like, something had to happen here. The example needed to be set that, hey, you can't make 12 bad choices in a row or whatever that leads to a loss of life and just walk away scot-free. I mean, really, when you break it down, it's kind of the same as making drunk driving choices. This guy chose to stay up without sleep and then drive. DUIs decide to drink and then drive. You're still making a bad decision and choosing to operate a vehicle. Kind of how the DA of this county broke it down. They got to charge this guy with something. So when it came down to it, they charged him with the misdemeanor vehicular manslaughter without gross negligence. I am recording, and you are just walking all up in here. What's up?
I was trying to be quiet so that you would just keep recording. But...
Yeah, I can keep recording. Yeah, I can edit this out. It's fine. Editing.
Hey, well, do that then.
What are you doing?
Getting presents.
Are you wrapping presents in here? Okay, Hey, say hi to Miss Grayson, everyone who listens. Say hi to everyone. Miss Grayson.
You said you were going to edit.
I'm not editing this part out. I'm editing the "what the fuck are you doing" part out. I'm not editing this part out. Miss Grayson is in the building doing stuffs behind me. Where was I? Lost my spot. The DA would not seek jail time, but would seek license restrictions, including suspending his license for 1.5 years. Arvind pled not guilty, and I tried to find the verdict of the case, but couldn't. I'm not sure if the info just wasn't released, or no one's reporting on the case anymore, or maybe it hasn't gone all the way through court yet, I'm not sure, but it seems pretty cut and dry. The jury's gonna find him guilty, especially where there's no real punishment other than you can't drive for a few months. Someone's gonna want at least that minimal punishment carried out. 1 year later in South Carolina, Patrick Boyd Jr. and 3 friends who had already fallen asleep were returning home in Patrick's Honda Accord after being up all night to cop some sweet video game deals on Black Friday when Patrick fell asleep at the wheel and struck a sign, killing him and seriously injuring the passengers. One of his friends said he recalled Patrick saying he was tired. Not a lot of details on that one. And it seems like the younger a victim is in these kind of things, the fewer details get released, I guess because it's a minor, they can't really give out a lot of stuff. But another case of falling asleep on the way home from Black Friday, getting in a deadly accident. So let's say you make it into the store, you get your hands on what you want, you get out of the store, you make it out of the parking lot, you manage to drive all the way home this Black Friday. You've done far better than some, but even then, you may sustain some serious injuries along the way. I'm just going to run down a list of the injuries real quick. 2011, a teenage girl is trampled at a Muskegon Walmart. 2012, trans woman Akasha Adonis and her mother are assaulted by people shoving past them at a Kohl's in Jackson, Tennessee. One assailant going so far as to jam his hand into her mouth and tearing out 3 teeth. Kohl's employees continued to greet shoppers while ignoring the fight, and when the cops got there, said that it was not their problem and they did not have time for this. 2005, a 73-year-old woman was trampled at a Florida BrandSmart, whatever the hell that is. 2013, New Boston, Ohio customers trample an 11-year-old girl. Luckily, there are cops on the scene and able to get her to the hospital before she died. 2011, Kinston, North Carolina, an off-duty cop pepper sprays a crowd so he could have the upper hand in shopping. 2013, 3 separate fights break out in a Rialto Walmart. An officer trying to break up one of the fights gets his wrist broken.
To make up for the cop that did the other bullshit.
2010, at a Best Buy in Georgia, a Marine working at a Toys for Tots booth attempts to apprehend a thief running out with merchandise when the thief stabs his ass and ran off. 2005, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I believe this one was at a Walmart. A pregnant woman is knocked down, trampled, and her wig knocked off. Aw, shit. They fucking knocked off her wig. 2013, Claypool Hill, Virginia. 25-year-old Christopher Jackson and 61-year-old Ronnie Sharp get into a fight over a parking spot when Sharp pulls a knife and a gun and stabs Jackson. 2011, Walmart. Again, who would have imagined? Porter Ranch, California. A woman pepper sprays over 20 other shoppers so she can snag an Xbox. 2011, Palm Beach, Target. Employee falls asleep driving home from her all-night shift and drives into a 20-foot deep canal. Luckily, she was rescued before the car sank. 2013, Northern New Jersey man begins arguing with a Walmart employee over a TV. When employees call the cops, the man attacks an employee and was eventually pepper sprayed by security. 2005, Lincoln, Nebraska. A line of customers waiting for laptops breaks out into a brawl of shoving in what was described as the most epic game of tug-of-war ever, trying to steal laptops from each other. 2013, Las Vegas. I like to call it lost wages. A man returning home from shopping with a big-ass TV gets shot in the leg, and the people who tried to steal his TV realized it wouldn't fit in their fucking car, so they just drop it on the ground and drive away. 2013, Ireland proves they can be just as shitty as America on Black Friday when crowds at an Asada store begin wrestling over merchandise, leaving one woman with a broken wrist. 2012, Walmart near Seattle. 71-year-old drunk driver hits 2 pedestrians in the parking lot. 2013, Carlsbad Mall. An 18-year-old is stabbed in the stomach outside the mall. 2009, Clarksville, Tennessee. A woman is trampled in line outside of Toys R Us. 2012, Tallahassee, Florida. A disagreement over a parking space at Walmart leads to a shooting that hospitalizes 2 people. God damn, keep it classy, Walmart. 2011, a 55-year-old woman is shot in the foot and robbed for her purse. Where else? A Walmart parking lot. 2006, Torrance, California. Del Amo Fashion Center. 500 balloons with gift certificates are dropped inside and fought over by 2,000 people. Quite a disparity there, and the ensuing chaos sends an elderly woman to the hospital. That is the last bit I have for the stories, as well as my faith in humanity. What did we learn? Don't go to Walmart or New Jersey, ever. We have Amazon and eBay and Cyber Monday, and you can shop at almost any store online, so maybe stay home this Black Friday. Enjoy your Thanksgiving meal. Spend time with your shitty families. Have a beer, smoke a joint, play some video games. Anything enjoyable instead of going out to participate in this shit. Unfortunately, I'll be at Walmart. As I've said, I love the chaos, and I've been tasked with picking up a few things for the kids. I've made it the last 3 years in a row as a shopper, years before as an observer, so I kind of feel like the crafty vetter that knows what he's doing. Of course, that's the kind of hubris that will probably be my downfall. Eventually, they'll get me, I'll get caught up, I'll get shot over a parking space or some dumb shit. So if a new episode doesn't go up in December, you know what happened to me. I didn't make it back from Black Friday. NoBetterDeath.info for all the info you need on No Better Death. Please like us on Facebook and Twitters and whatever's. Follow us, whatever you do, wherever you do it. Please leave the iTunes reviews. I've got the giveaway going on right now. I'm giving away some TV seasons. I have like 1,000 DVDs and need to clear some out, but I don't just want to give them to some rando or sell them to, I don't know, whoever buys fucking used DVDs now. I want to give them to you guys. So all iTunes reviews from November 1st to December 5th will be entered to win. These were watched once and put on a shelf. They're like brand new. One winner will get seasons 1 through 3 of Heroes. A second winner will get Arrow Season 2. A third winner will get the Sarah Connor Chronicles Season 1. And a fourth winner
will eat poop.
Poop! That's winner number 5. The fourth winner gets True Blood Season 5. So there you have it. Giving away some stuff. You can come pick the poop up in person, or I can mail it to you. Go leave an iTunes review. Also, if you have any stories of death, something you want to see covered on the show, or just any random comments or stories, hit me up on the Facebook or the Twitter, or nobetterdeath@gmail.com. I'll see what I can do to work it into the show. I can always use more content. You give it to me, I'll say it. Like, subscribe, comment, review. No Better Death, ladies and gentlemen, non-binaries. I am he who is known as I am, Sick Grayson. Until next time, try not to die.